Before continuing, it is important to remember what had already happened to Daniel on Route 44, because without that context, what follows would sound impossible. He had already seen the black figure twice, once standing in the road and once near the shoulder, had experienced his truck shutting down without explanation, felt something press against the hood, and discovered inhuman handprints left behind in dust. He had begun researching Route 44 and realized he was not alone, that others had encountered something similar, something undocumented, ignored, and quietly buried. This is where his email took a darker turn, because the deeper he looked, the more he understood that the road itself carried a history no map would ever show. Daniel explained that Route 44 was not always just a highway. Long before asphalt and mile markers, the land was used as a transit path by indigenous tribes and later by early settlers and mining crews. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, several unofficial service roads branched off Route 44, leading to mining sites that were shut down abruptly after a series of fatal accidents. Records were sealed, companies dissolved, and the land was left to the desert. Daniel found references in archived county documents to multiple nighttime crashes reported along a very specific 5-mile stretch, crashes where drivers claimed to see something step into the road just before impact. Most of those reports were dismissed as fatigue or alcohol-related hallucinations. But what disturbed Daniel was how consistent the descriptions were: tall, black, featureless, silent. One forum post from a retired Arizona state trooper caught his attention. The trooper claimed that during his career, he responded to 3 separate incidents on Route 44 where vehicles were found abandoned, engines still warm, doors open, no signs of struggle, and no trace of the drivers. Those cases were quietly marked as voluntary disappearances. Daniel realized that the black figure did not cause crashes every time. Sometimes, it simply took people. The next email paragraph described something Daniel had avoided admitting even to himself. After his second encounter, the figure did not stay on Route 44. It followed him. Not physically, but in presence. Daniel began noticing changes in his surroundings no matter where he drove. Shadows lingered longer than they should. Reflections in mirrors lagged by a fraction of a second. He would hear footsteps in empty truck stops late at night, always behind him, never close enough to see. One night, parked at a rest area in Nevada, he woke up to find long streaks of black residue along the side of his trailer, similar to the marks he had seen on Route 44. He washed them off before dawn. Daniel said he stopped sleeping properly. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw roads with no end and headlights with no drivers. Eventually, he made a decision that terrified him more than the encounters themselves. He went back to Route 44 on purpose. He believed the road was the source, and if he wanted it to stop, he had to understand it. On December 14, 2011, just after midnight, Daniel parked his truck on the shoulder near the same 5-mile stretch. He brought no weapons, no camera, no recording devices. He wrote that technology seemed useless against whatever this was. He stepped out into the cold desert air and stood beside the road, waiting. The silence returned immediately, thick and unnatural. Then the figure appeared, not on the road, but behind him. Daniel felt it before he saw it, the pressure, the cold, the sense of being observed from inside his own thoughts. He did not turn around. He said out loud that he wanted to know what it was, why it was there, and why it chose that road. The response did not come in words. Images flooded his mind: violent crashes, broken bodies, men left dying in the dark while others drove past without stopping. The figure was not born from one death, but many. It was an accumulation, a shape formed from neglect, abandonment, and forgotten lives. Route 44 was where it anchored, where it fed, where it waited. Daniel collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed, and when he looked up, the figure was gone. In its place, on the asphalt, was a single dark mark stretching across the road, fresh and smoking as if burned into existence. Daniel left Route 44 that night for the last time. He quit long-haul driving 3 months later. He moved to a city, took a warehouse job, and tried to live a normal life. But he ended his email with a warning. He said Route 44 still exists. Trucks still pass through it. People still drive it late at night. And sometimes, drivers report sudden cold, engine failures, and shapes in the road that vanish too quickly to describe. He wrote that the black figure does not chase. It waits. And one day, someone will stop instead of driving away. If you've listened to this far, ask yourself one thing: if you were driving alone at midnight and saw something standing in the road that should not exist, would you slow down, or would you keep driving? Because the next part reveals what happens when someone makes the wrong choice, and before that happens, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because the final part will expose the one detail Daniel said he never told anyone, the detail that proves Route 44 is still claiming people even today. The detail Daniel said he never told anyone was not something he discovered in an archive or a forum, and it was not something the road showed him in visions. It was something that happened after he thought everything was over. In his email, Daniel explained that years after leaving long-haul driving, after moving into a normal apartment complex in a mid-sized American city and settling into a predictable routine, he began receiving emails from strangers. At first, he ignored them, assuming they were spam or people who had somehow found his contact information through old driving forums. But one message stood out. The subject line read simply Route 44. Inside, the sender described a late-night drive through northern Arizona, the cold inside the vehicle, the radio cutting out, and a tall black figure standing near the shoulder of the road. The wording was different, but the experience was the same. Daniel replied once, asking where exactly it happened. The response came within minutes. Mile marker 213. The same 5-mile stretch. That was when Daniel realized something was deeply wrong, because he had never publicly shared that location. Over the next several years, the messages continued, always from different people: truck drivers, late-night commuters, even a family returning from a camping trip. Some described seeing the figure from a distance. Some described engine failure. A few described stopping. Those emails were shorter. Fragmented. Some cut off mid-sentence. Daniel kept every message, organizing them by date, location, and description. A pattern emerged. The figure appeared more frequently during colder months. It showed up almost exclusively between midnight and 2 a.m. And most disturbing of all, drivers who stopped their vehicles and exited never sent follow-up messages. Daniel wrote that he tried to warn people when he could, replying with a simple instruction: do not stop, do not get out, no matter what you hear or see. Most never replied again. 1. Did a man named Eric. Eric claimed he saw the figure standing farther back from the road, almost as if it were waiting. He said the figure did not move toward his car, but his radio turned on by itself, playing what sounded like overlapping voices, too many to understand. Eric pulled over, thinking someone might be hurt nearby. That was the last email Daniel ever received from him. No missing persons report ever surfaced. No abandoned vehicle was found. Eric simply vanished. The final section of Daniel's email explained why he decided to share his story at all. Months before he wrote it, he had been driving home from work late one evening when his GPS recalculated his route unexpectedly. For a brief moment, Route 44 appeared on his screen, hundreds of miles away, as if it were close, as if it were an option. At the same time, the temperature inside his car dropped sharply, and the dashboard lights flickered. Daniel pulled over immediately, heart racing, and turned the car off. When he looked up, he saw his reflection in the windshield, and behind it, for just a second, a tall dark shape standing on the road behind him. When he turned around, it was gone. That was when Daniel understood the truth he had been avoiding. The black figure was not bound by geography. Route 44 was not just a location. It was an anchor. The figure could reach beyond it through those who acknowledged it, studied it, or remembered it too clearly. Daniel ended his email with a warning that felt less like a story conclusion and more like a confession. He said that every road has a history, but some histories are unfinished. Route 44 was built over ground where people died unnoticed, where accidents were ignored, where disappearances were explained away because it was easier than admitting something was wrong. The figure was not evil in the way people imagine monsters. It was patient. It waited for attention, for hesitation, for the moment someone chose curiosity over instinct. Daniel said that if you ever find yourself driving through a stretch of road where the silence feels wrong, where the cold comes too fast, and where something stands ahead that should not exist, remember this story. Do not slow down. Do not stop. And never step out of your vehicle. Because some roads are still hungry, and they remember every driver who ever thought they were alone. If this story made you pause, if it made you imagine yourself behind the wheel on a dark, empty highway, then make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because the more people who hear these stories, the fewer names get added to roads like Route 44, and the next story might just be about a place you travel every day without realizing what's watching. Why?